I have the very pleasure of being here with the wonderful Hazel Meredith again. And I'm really, really excited for this session because Hazel Meredith, what will you be showing us today?
Today we're going to see how to change up and work with different skies in our images. I'm going to show a combination of ways that we can do that using the Photoshop sky replacement as well as blending a sky, with your image. And some of these products that I've chosen for this segment have some great features of their own, so I'm going to point those out as we go along as well. Hey everybody, I'm glad to be back with you again through Design Cuts. They have some awesome sessions and I'm happy to be a part of it. This is just a very plain, boring image I took in Cape Cod a few years ago. Love to shoot along the beaches, but of course the sky was a very blah, gray day, so we're definitely going to jazz this up a bit. And a couple of these projects, I'm actually going to show you two different things that I've done to it. This one I'm going to do a couple different ways. So let's get started. So I'm going to start by opening up on my other screen. I have the Stormy Skies folder open, and I'm going to bring this back over for 1 sec so you can see all the goodies that are in here, because there's a tutorial that comes with this as well. And there are 60 different skies in this one. And I'm actually going to work with this one right here, this last one. Because I opened that separately, I didn't drag it over. It's nice when I do two screens, because if I drag it in, it automatically makes it a separate layer. But a lot of people only have one monitor. So the way you would bring this in is grab your Move tool, this top tool here, and you'll see I have both images open separately. So I'm going to just grab on this tab and pull down so I can see my two images side by side. And I'm going to grab anywhere in this sky texture, click, hold, and drag my cursor over my image. And when I let go, you'll see that sky is now over there. And we can close this folder. And then we're going to size our sky to the image. So now the sky is covering our image. You can see I have the two separate layers, and I'm going to change the blending mode of this layer from normal to multiply. And of course, that's too dark. So now we'll lower the opacity of this layer to make it blend in. And then I'm also going to add a brightness adjustment layer, because I want to brighten the sky. I'm actually going to leave this at 100% for a second. We're going to add a brightness adjustment, and I'm going to brighten up this sky. And that's where we're going to see our background come through. Now, if I wanted to brighten this background a little bit more, I could also add a brightness layer right above the image. So that will only affect my background image and not my sky. And we can pull up some more brightness there. Now this brightness layer, I only wanted to adjust my sky. So I'm actually going to clip these two layers together. And there's a couple ways you can do that. I like to use some shortcut keys, and I'm on a PC. So to clip this layer to this would be Control-Alt-G. On a Mac, it would be Command-Option-G. The other way you can do it, if you don't want to remember the letters, is if you hold the Alt or Option key, and when you put your cursor in between the layers, you get that little square with the downward arrow. Just click and it will do the same thing and clip that to that layer.
Awesome.
And one thing I wanted to point out, when I'm choosing skies for an image, and I shoot a lot of skies myself for when I'm working on images, but these are all fabulous ones as well. And I'm glad I have them in my digital toolbox right now. But if you notice, the curve of the clouds in the sky kind of mirrors the curve of the grasses. So that's something I look for when I'm choosing a sky. Not only am I looking at the colors, and in this case, like where the sun is positioned, but it kind of coordinates nicely with your image when you look for things like that.
Yeah, and PhotoMaker said in the questions at the beginning, it'll be interesting to see if you use Edit Sky Replacement and Select Sky, or whether you'll do it with overlays. Which is best. I think this shows just the power of those both basic overlays and blending modes.
Absolutely. We are going to do the Photoshop sky replacement
I'm
too
looking
today
forward to
so that
seeing
you
that.
can also see that way of
Cool.
doing it. Because it's like everything in Photoshop, there's, 5 different ways to do everything. So,
Amazing.
and we're going to go into the sky gradients. I'm going to go into the JPEG versions for right now and show you what is in here. So these are, if you just wanted to drag over the overlay, you could definitely do this like this. And I'm going to use where am I using? Sunrise 05. So I'm picking this one here, and I'm going to put this on my other screen so I can just drag it over to save time. So when I drag it over and let go, as I mentioned, you'll see it just automatically makes it a separate layer for me. And it's already sized properly, so I'll click the check mark. Now, if you remember, the curve of my grasses is kind of going uphill to the right, but the curve of this gradient is going the other direction. So again, I'm going to try and match that curve of my grass. So I'm going to go into Edit, Transform, and I'm going to flip this horizontally. So now the curve is going the same direction as my grass. So again, I'm going to use multiply, and I'm going to pull back the opacity a little bit.
Nice. And that really guides the eye then along the grass, doesn't it? Otherwise, it would have just literally bounced off the gradient and ended up going out the left of the frame.
Yep. And then the other thing you can do, if you wanted to try and get a little more of this yellow color under here, you're not always limited to the gradient or sky being the exact size of your image. You can use your move tool and grab the handles, and I'm going to hold the shift key to unconstrain my proportions. And I'm just going to drag this and stretch it out so I get a little more of that yellow flowing down that edge there. And then we end up with a complete image, and nobody would know that you've stretched it out, but it gives you, again, more of that curve that the same to match your grass.
Nice. Nice. It feels a lot less tight now, doesn't it? Just that small tweak.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It felt a little dark with the pink being like right on top of it. So now, and you could stretch it even more if you wanted to. So you're not limited to how you can work with these. Another thing I just thought of while I was talking, if we click back on this and instead of just resizing it, go to Edit, Transform, and
Nita's
Skew.
saying it's a beautiful sky color, and Jerry says it's a huge difference, and that's so simple, so easy to do.
So if you just use the skew, you could also stretch just the one corner and bring up yellow without having to stretch the whole thing. So that's another way you can do it. So go to Edit, Transform, and Skew. And then you could just drag one corner, or you could bring the other corner down a little bit. Let's go back and click it again. Skew. And then you can just...
when you dragged in the sky gradient over the image, and do we have to hold Shift in Photoshop to make the gradient center like it did?
No, it automatically does that when I bring it in. Yep. It will usually match at least one dimension in the size, the narrowest dimension. This one just happened to be the exact same size or shape as my image was, so it covered it perfectly. Cool. So it definitely, by being able to drag it in, saves time in resizing because you're already kind of halfway there. So let's close this one. And I choose my next image is going to be a skyline of Boston. And I took this from a boat. We were going out on a whale watching trip with one of my camera clubs a few years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I was shooting back at the skyline. So it's a shot you normally wouldn't be able to get unless you were on the water. And the sky is okay, but of course we're going to make it look even better.
Did you see any whales?
We did. They didn't come way up out of the water, but we did get to see a couple kind of bobbing next to the boat. It was tough to photograph them because they didn't really come up too high, but it was still fun. Yeah.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It was a lot of fun. So for this one, I'm going to go to, I'm going to use a gradient again to start. And I'm going to use number, I'm on my other screen, so that's why you're not
Cool. Cool.
seeing me. I'm going to use sunrise.
Cool. So
to
Sandy just asked if you
Portugal.
could flip it in the questions, but I guess you might have missed you flipping the
Yes,
gradient
and
before.
I'll be
Yeah.
doing that again. So
Cool.
yeah, you'll see me do
Thanks,
that again.
Hazel.
So you can see when I dragged it in, you see how it's matching the height, and then I can just drag it out to cover the width. So it will always match one image when you drag it in that way. And then you can either hit enter or hit the check mark. So now it's covering the image. So this one I'm going to use multiply. Multiply works well with sky images. And I'm going to bring this down about 72%. Now, I like what it's done for the sky, but I don't like the bluish tone it's put on the buildings. So we're going to use a layer mask to get rid of that. So I'm going to add a layer mask. Now, an easy way to mask this is to use a selection brush. So you could take a brush and just paint the lines, but then you've got to be very careful that you get the straight lines straight. So I'm going to select my background layer so I have the pixels on it. And I'm going to use the quick selection brush. And it would be easier to select the sky and then reverse it rather than select the buildings. So I'm just going to quickly run my brush across, and you can see, other than the lighter colors, it did a pretty good job of catching most of the buildings. And then we can fine tune it. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make my brush a little smaller.
I feel like this makes me feel really old because, you know, in the old days of Photoshop, I maybe have been fiddling around with the magic wand and
Yes,
you know, like
I
increasing
actually
and decreasing the numbers. And
yes, I actually tried the magic wand on this one, and it was quicker to do the this brush rather than the magic wand. So I did try that. So to make this simpler to select, now that I have most of the sky done, I'm going to go ahead and inverse this before I finesse it. So what I want to do is have the skyline selected. So we're just going to go to our select menu and click on inverse. So now you see the marching ants are around the bottom of the image. So now our buildings are what are selected. So now I can come in, and because it will see the colors a little better is why I did that. And like I said, I'm going to get as good as I can without spending too much time because I want to show you the fun part of all of this. But we'll try and grab most of our buildings here. And I'm just looking along the edges. We can finesse that part later if we needed to. Just kind of
I love that though, Hazel, the marching ants. I wonder if Do Adobe actually use that as part of their
I haven't seen that used for a really long time. So
yeah, it's great though, isn't it?
It is. It's fun. So like this building, it didn't really select, but you can see very quickly. I can grab that. And then right now, this tool is set on the plus, so it defaults to adding to my selection. So if I want to take away, I can hold down my Alt key and it becomes a minus sign in there. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And then I could just do that real quick. And then when you let go of the Alt key, it goes back to being a plus. So pretty quickly we can get this selected and grab those little spots. And if you see, my cursor is turning into the hand tool, so I can drag. The way you do that is just hold down the space bar, and that is good when you're working with any tool. And then it turns your cursor into the hand tool, and you can drag things around. I find it easier than using these sliders because it's just, I can keep my left hand, on all these different controls, and you can move it in any direction. You're not limited to just up and down and sideways.
Cool.
So it's just
asked how you were making corrections on the buildings, but I think you're explaining it all as you go. So hopefully,
yes, I'm just
that will be answered.
Continuing to add to the selection, and then I'm going to take away just that little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good for what we need to do right now. So what I want to do is mask the sky off of the building. So I have this selection made, and the way that we mask is to paint with black, right? So I'm going to make my foreground color black, and I'm just going to hit the keyboard shortcut Alt Backspace. And just like that, I've created a mask. So if I wanted to take not quite all of the color away, I'm going to undo that. Instead of having it solid black, I could use maybe about a 75% gray as my color and do the same thing. So now you can see the mask is a little bit grayer. So there's a hint of the blue without it being quite so blue on the sky. I mean, on the buildings. And then
Nice.
Control D or Command D will deselect it.
And that really
Certain
binds them
things
together more, doesn't it? In
it
terms of
does.
tonality.
Yeah, it gives it that little bit of blue, but yet it's not, you know, completely dark blue. So that's step one. So I'm going to do a couple things to this one. So next I'm going to bring in our transparent background grouping. Let me bring this over for a second because there's a bunch of stuff in here. So this one is clouds on transparent backgrounds. And you can see there are aircraft contrails, birds, and all different kinds of clouds in here. So I'm actually going to add some birds to this image. So when I open this, there are PNGs, and there's a PSD, which has layers of everything stacked that you could grab out of. But for speed right now, I'm going to just go to the PNG files. And I'm going to use this birds too, and I'm going to just drag that on top. And of course, that's much too big. So we're going to bring this way down. Rotate it a little bit. So we have some birds in our sky now. And I'm going to add some more clouds to this one. So I'm going to also go into this same folder and go to Cloud Soft 2. And this again this is just a preview, but then there's a layered file, or you can bring in, they have both the black and white PNGs. And you can see what those look like here. So I'm going to use the white PNG and just drag it over. And this is on a transparent background. And then we're going to resize this one. I'm going to move this up a little bit. And I also thought I wanted this darker side over here. So again, if somebody missed that before, we go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And that will bring it across. And I'm going to move them into position, and I'm going to do a Command T to get my handles back and scroll back because I know they are bigger. When you're working with something that's on a transparent background, if you're dragging it, you want to make sure you grab on pixels that have some color on them, because if you grab the transparent, it doesn't always move. It will sometimes just sit there and you'll be like, why is it not moving? So kind of get in the habit of dragging where there are pixels.
Nita says that the birds complete the sky. It's good, isn't it? It's just fun building it up, isn't it?
It is. I love to add birds to my images like that. So now that we have the sky on here, now our clouds are in front of our building, right? So we need to get rid of those. We want them behind the building. So since we created this mask before, we can reuse this mask without redoing it. All I'm going to do is hold down my Alt key. I selected the mask. I'm going to hold the Alt key or Option on a Mac, click and drag that up to my cloud layer, and it duplicates it. So now the clouds are gone or mostly gone. There's a faint hint because we didn't do a solid, black here, but you could always come back in if you needed to with a brush and go over that a little bit more. That's probably the only area that really it would stand out on, because the others are pretty wispy over there. So now we've added a little more drama to the sky, a little more color, plus some birds. And because the birds are now behind the clouds, I would take that layer.
They'd have to be huge, right?
Yeah, and drag that above the clouds. Cool. And then you could also lower the opacity of the birds just a little bit so that they blend in and they're not quite so solid.
But Bill says, when things start to go wonky, remember the age-old rule, save often.
Yes, yes, sure. I do. I definitely
this,
do.
like this Control S twitch with my hand, you know, from years of using Adobe applications.
Yeah, there's always like weird, especially in Photoshop. You hit something, you go, "What did I do?
Yeah,
Why is it doing that?
What's going on?"
What the heck?" So I'm going to go up to Edit, and we're going to go to Sky Replacement.
Need to say it's an awesome tip to lower the opacity of the birds.
Yeah, I tend to do that
good.
when I use those a lot too. Even when I'm editing on my phone, there's a couple of apps that have birds in them, and I always reduce the opacity just a little bit. It makes them look a little more realistic.
Yeah, I guess things get hazier and hazier the further away they get, don't they? When you look into the distance,
especially with the clouds behind them and stuff. So we're going to do a very dramatic sky on this one.
Like
so this is this is one. It remembered it because it's the last thing I used, of course. So these are all of the skies that come in Photoshop, and then you can bring in your own, or in this case, bring in one from this grouping from Design Cuts. Come on, go to the bottom. Thank you. So I was playing with another one, and these are from the same skies folder that I've been working on, the skies product. And this is the one that I brought in. And to bring one in, you just click on the plus sign, and then it will open up your browser so you can find the sky. And there's also some really great night skies in this folder. So I'm going to bring that back over there. So I'm going to use this one. So we're going to then, okay. Thank you. Oh, I got to close that.
Those all for us. Thanks, Jem, for linking them up for us.
And this one I decided I wanted the darker part over here. So again, I'm going to flip it. And in here, all you have to do is click this little box that says flip, and it will flip the sky horizontally for you. So in this one, I'm going to, what am I doing? I'm going to do a few adjustments here. I wanted to shift the edge, which shifts the bottom edge of the sky to, let me bring this up to about 47. I wanted the darker part to come down a little farther. Because it didn't quite catch the edges here, I'm going to change the scale just slightly to like 105, and it will make it a little bit bigger. And then I changed the lighting to about 50. And then I wanted to output to a new layer. So if I wanted to make further adjustments, you're going to see the layers that this product creates within Photoshop. It's going to actually automatically mask for you. And then I'm going to add a couple more adjustments on top of this. So I'm going to do a brightness adjustment. And again, I only want this to affect the sky. So when I'm done at making the adjustment, I'm going to clip it to that other group. And in here, I went to brightness, actually brought it down a hair. And then I'm going to do that Control-Alt-G. Where'd my layer go? What they? Okay, this is, oh, it's adding it at the bottom. That's why. It's adding, I'm in the wrong place. My bad. So again, I'm going to clip this layer to the sky replacement group because I only want that to affect the sky and not my foreground. And I'm going to do a vibrance adjustment. And I brought that up a little bit.
Kind of feel like they're just piling functionality at every release, and you just don't always know what's actually gone in there.
Yes, I actually watched a few webinars on some of the new things in Photoshop because they really did add a lot in the last couple of updates.
For sure.
So I have been, trying to check those out myself. So under the hue and saturation, I decided to go into the cyans, and I just lowered that saturation of the blue a little bit here. And again, I'm also going to clip that to.
Chantel says it looks stunning. It does look stunning.
So we want to clip that one, and then we want to clip that one because I only want those adjustments to affect the sky.
And Nita's been working in the background, but she stopped her work in the background because she could. So this is crippling Nita's productivity for the day.
Uh-oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Nita.
Which is what these sessions always do for me as well. I'm just watching it in the background.
Yeah, and then it's like, ooh, what did they just do? So there you have it. So with the sky replacement of Photoshop, it can be, it's a little more, with a complicated foreground like this, it saved us having to do the mask because it did it for us. So it is a handy tool to have. I don't use it all the time. I also have some other products that do sky replacement that I use, some other plugin software. But the Photoshop one does a pretty decent job most of the time. I don't think it does quite as many adjustments to the foreground as some of the others, but for something simple like this, it does a terrific job. Alrighty, so let's close that one. And now we're going to do some lightning. We're going to turn a daytime image into nighttime. So this is a shot I took out in Sedona, Arizona. This is a 13-shot panorama that I put together in Photoshop. And that's why my sky is a little wonky there, but that's okay because we're not going to see that when we're done.
I love doing those massive stitched together shots where you're like,
yeah, it takes a while sometimes for them to work. So for this one, I'm going to bring over the folder. Oh, here we go. Because for this one, I'm going to use, let's get to the right folder, all the subfolders. We're going to use the night sky background overlays. And in here, this actually comes with an action. And what that does is when you play this action, it will place the sky that you choose, and then it changes the blending mode for you automatically. So it saves you a little bit of time if you don't want to just drag them in yourself. And with these lightning bolts that I'm going to do, it's actually going to go to a screen blending mode rather than multiply like we were doing with the others. So I've already installed this action. And the way you do that is I have my actions panel over here. If you don't see an actions panel, just go to Window and Actions and it will open it up for you. And then you're going to click this little hamburger menu over here and you're going to load the actions and then go to the folder where you download this product and choose that action. And it will then add it down here to the bottom of your actions panel. And I've opened the arrow for it. It's going to be called overlays. So you could see what is in it. So this is the steps that it will automatically do for you. So you want to click on screen and mask because that's the process. And then when you click the play button, it's going to open the folder that came with this product. And you can see there's tons of cool night skies here, which I haven't tried those, but I think they will look great on this image too. We have northern lights, and then we have our lightning shots. So I'm going to start, I'm actually going to do 2 on here because I want to have lots of lightning bolts. So I'm going to start with this one. So you just double click it and it's going to place it. And then once I stretch it into position, I am going to move this. I'm just going to let it get to that point and say okay. And then it's going to finish the action. So if I come back to my layers, you'll see it's here. It added a mask, so if you need to mask part of it, you can. And it changed that to screen at 100%. So I'm going to use my move tool. And of course, I want the lightning bolts to land on the rocks. And so I'm going to come back and then I'm going to stretch it a little just so that they're taller. And then just like we did with the skyline in the last one, I want to mask this off of the rock. So I'm going to kind of do a similar process. I'm going to click on my image, grab the quick selection tool, and this one's going to be even simpler. Just like that, it selected the sky. And then I'm going to inverse it so that it selected now the rocks. Click on my mask. I'm going to excuse me, set it to black and do my Alt backspace. Awesome. Now the lightning is only on the sky. We haven't affected the rocks at all at this point. We're going to add another overlay to darken this down so it looks more like nighttime in a sec. But that would be just like that. You can add, a cool sky to this.
It's so simple, isn't it?
It is. It really does make it easy. Having the action does save some time.
I used to use like underwater photo actions. They were quite cool back in the day when I did underwater photography, because a lot of it there was like standard color balancing and things that you needed to do in shots. So it's perfect for that.
I haven't written a lot of my own actions, but they are fun to do, especially if you have something you do a lot.
You just hit record and then go through it all and then stop at the end and just records it all. It's cool.
So I'm going to select this one this time. And again, I'm just going to start kind of getting it where I want it to be. So we've got the same thing. It's placed this one. I'm going to move it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to go back to my layers palette. Again, I'm going to copy this mask by holding my Alt key, clicking that mask and dragging it up. And it's going to ask if I want to replace it because it did have a blank mask there. So I'm going to say yes. And there you have it. Now we do have a little overlap, so we can go into our mask again, grab a brush. I'm going to use a kind of soft round brush. Let's go down here, make sure I'm on the soft one. And I'm also going to use a low opacity of the brush and just try and blend these a little bit. And again, we're going to be able to do that even more. Whoops, I have to change my foreground to black. And you can just gradually work these in together. So that gets rid of that
working
seam
through it
there.
with the shapes that are already there to help it blend, or
kind of. I'm really just kind of going over the edges of this so that it will, we don't see that edge line, and then kind of blend it so it looks not like another sharp line, just so that it looks a little more jaggedy. So it's a variation in the color rather than because it was the two pieces together. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I want to darken this whole thing, but I don't really want to darken my lightning too much. So I'm going to click on the background and I'm going to add this next one behind those two. So I'm going to drag in, let me get to the right. And so I'm going back to the stormy skies. And I'm going to bring in number 56.
And Phil asked if these will work in Luminar, and our team in the back and the back have had a look and said yes, but only on Macs apparently with the PSDs.
Yes, but they also have JPEG versions in all of these folders. So yes, all of these can be added to Luminar, which I use quite a bit.
Actually, I think I remember using that in the last session and it being really cool.
I might have.
Yeah, I think you did.
I use that quite a lot.
Yeah, before you were bringing things in, I think you were doing some pre-work in Luminar. Yeah.
So what I've done is I've brought this texture in behind the lightning because I'm really trying to darken down the foreground as well as a little bit to the sky. So you see if I turn it off. Yeah, it's only adding a little bit of change to that, but I really wanted this foreground to look more like nighttime. So then you can just play with the opacity as to how dark you want it to be. And then I adjusted the second lightning. I did bring this one down as well. So now some of the darker,
that's awesome.
This darker sky is kind of coming through a little bit. And we can bring this one down maybe just a hair. Yeah, so now it looks a little bit more like nighttime, and you can just play around with your opacities. There you go.
Nice. Beautiful.
So we've turned day into night. So this is a natural sky. I actually photographed this sky in here. This was a shot in Newfound Gap in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park last year. We went down for a few days, and this was sunrise. And I see a little smudge there, a little dust spot. When we get those. There we go. We can get rid of that real quick. And another one up there too. You can tell I haven't done a lot to this image yet. But you can also use some of these cloud overlays to just jazz up a sky a little bit more. So even though there are lots of cool clouds already in here, I went into those clouds that are on the transparent backgrounds. So let's go up to that. And I used
I should point out as well that Jem has very kindly linked up your Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and your website, Hazel. So anyone who's interested in this awesome content, please do go and follow it, because as you can see, you're an awesome teacher. So
thank you. I really enjoy teaching quite a bit.
Isn't it?
I do a lot for camera clubs. I do my own webinars. I had one on Tuesday afternoon and I've been doing like various creative topics. It's a lot of fun. It is. I really enjoy it.
Well, we really love having you on here. So thanks ever so much again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I brought in, I'm going to add a few more clouds here. And of course, I want to blend these a little more, and I want them to be a bright white so we can work with our different blending modes. So I'm going to, let's see what works here. So overlay, soft light is actually very nice. Hard light's going to make it more like normal. So I'm just trying to bring in a few more wisps here. And there is, let's see, I'm going to do, I did that. Drag that, and then I'm going to bring in another one of theirs. Let's see.
Jem's already just pulled up some of your live sessions that you've done with us as well, so please do go check those out too. Really
Thank you. And I also have links to them on my website, to the Design Cut sites, as well as on my webinar page. I have mine, and at the bottom I have webinars I've done for other companies as well, and your guys are all there, and I'll be adding this one when we get the recording done.
Cool.
So, well, I'm going to try something on the fly here, and let's see what happens. I have the I'll bring this in. I have the gradients open, so we're going to see what we can do with one of these and how we can change up the sky. So I'm looking for something that's similar to what I have. So let's try this pretty, even though it says sunset and we're doing a sunrise, that's okay. So I'm dragging that one in, and let's try, soft light.
Nita's saying in chat how much she's learning from chat, and yeah, me too. I think it's just so lovely to see everyone chatting and talking about the session whilst it's going on. It's great.
It is great.
It up, hasn't it? It's lovely.
So yeah, so we went from this very kind of cool tone and used one of the gradients and made it much brighter. And I actually like that the lighter area is down here because it was already lighter. Well, actually it was a little bit darker there. So we could flop this as well, like we were doing before. So let's see, edit. Oh, first I have to be on the layer and turn it on. Transform, flip horizontal. There we go. So now the brighter area has stayed where the brighter area was. So it's brightened it a little bit more. And we could always bring down the opacity of it a little bit so it doesn't overpower it. But what a difference it made from kind of a cool tone to a
really
very
interesting
warm.
To see it on a beautiful sky already, that you can just then elevate it that a little bit more.
Yep. And we added those few extra clouds in there. So those, added a little more, interest across the sky as well. So yeah, you can take something that's already got a nice sky and then even jazz it up a little bit more and make it look cool that way.
Wait, we've had another question in from Photomaker. It is, if we add a white misty or cloudy overlay to an image, will a LUT color lookup in PS add color over the white to match in the colors in the sunrise set? Sometimes colors don't stick out in Photoshop.
I would think so. I haven't tried that, but I would think it would, as long as your LUT layer is above the clouds, it should apply to all of those layers beneath it. The way that you can be sure that it does, and this is something I do a lot of times, if I'm going to take something into a plugin, and like if I were to open, Topaz or Luminar or one of those kind of things now, it would only read this top layer because it can only read one layer from Photoshop. So what I'll do is, rather than flattening my image, I'll create a merged layer. And the shortcut for this, you need lots of fingers. It's Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. On a Mac, it would be Command, Option, Shift, E.
I feel like it helps with your piano playing, guitar.
Pretty much.
Really big hand.
The nickname of that is the Claw, and you can see why.
Yeah.
But now that I have all of these images are merged into this one layer, so if you were to apply a LUT on top of it, then you could be sure that it would apply to everything in that layer. Or you could take this layer into, if you wanted to use the LUTs in like Luminar, you could take that into Luminar now and then add it on. It would apply to that, everything in that layer.
Awesome.
So I use this a lot because I like keeping my layers. I like to work on layers. So if I don't like something, I can go back and adjust or delete. And this way I could just delete this layer and still have everything else here if I wanted to come back and play some more.
Awesome. Well, Sam says that she's in awe of it. This looks even more beautiful. Thank you, Sam. It does look stunning, doesn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't tried that on here before, and it's like, yeah, I kind of like that now. I have to keep that one. Yeah. And that's everything I have. So do we have if we have any other questions?
I think that's all. I've managed to work through all the questions, and
awesome.
I think I just have to say that was just an awesome session, and thanks again ever so much for coming on. I always love your sessions. Yeah. I love geeking out over Photoshop.
I'll stop sharing and we can chit chat.
What photographer designer doesn't love, seeing someone else work in Photoshop? That was super cool.
For sure.
So thank you.
Get all these extra screens out of the way here.
Yeah, and thank you for everyone for coming along to watch the session. Don't forget that if you click the Design Cuts logo at the top, you can actually subscribe, and we can actually tell you about these sessions before they come up so that you don't miss any. Go along to the actual page that this session was on, and you see all the products linked up there as well. Do have a look at our mini bundles that we're just trying out. As I said, the community asked for them, so we're running a few brush mini bundles. There's something a little bit different. It's not something we normally do. Leave some comments there. Tell us what you think, because we love to give our community what they want.
Absolutely.
And that's it. I think I've remembered everything. I've got a list around here of things
everything I need to tell everybody.
Yeah, let's surreptitiously look at the list from the corner. And
perfect.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Hazel. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Come today, and we hope to see you back soon. So lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks ever so much.
Have a great day.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.